Whenever I start to talk, you should start. So what did we say about the redemptive historical hermeneutic? The redemptive historical mindset? What are the two things we are finding in the Bible with that kind of mindset? Say that again? Okay. Yeah, one ultimate author, one unifying theme and all that. But really, at the end of the day, what's the product, the only two, of the redemptive historical mindset? What are we looking for in the Bible? Say that again? Say?
Christ and salvation.
Christ and salvation. Christ and redemption. You know, sometimes you know the answer, and then you're afraid to speak. This is the problem. Now then, in a nutshell, what we have discussed so far, I think, let me sort of give a very sketchy summary and then proceed to deal with the homiletics, all right? Because that is what I want to deal with today. So in terms of the grammatical, the historical principle, we were dealing with exegesis, is that right? Digging out the meaning of the Bible, and we have looked at context, word study, figures of speech, and then we examined the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and there we were concerned with symbolism, typology, right? And then we talked about the different genres, literary genres in the Bible. We're talking about letters, you're talking about narratives, you're talking about parables, you're talking about apocalyptic literature, you're talking about Hebraism and songs, poetry. All this was to bring us to the place where we actually can interpret the written words of the Bible as a piece of literature, as a piece of writing. Does that make sense up until then? Yes. But we say, if all you have done is to interpret the writing, so that you know that logos means word or study, if that is all you've done, you are not different from a student of high school literature. All right? They give set books in high school, and then they say, write an essay on this and that, and so you are trying to interpret Shakespeare or Ken Walibora or whatever it is that you study. Idagaa Kimemwozea is a set book I hear they're dealing with. And so you are told to write something about what Mr. Walibora has written. I hope it's Walibora. Okay. Huh? Yeah, Ken Walibora Waliola. It's a strange name. Anyways, you will be no different from that kind of person. Even more, you will be no different from a lecturer of a university or of a college. Because the message of the Bible is in Christ and the redemption he brings. Do you understand that? And so we talked then about the redemptive historical principle. Or mindset, as I like to call it. So that we have interpretation, and that interpretation has brought us Christ and what? Salvation. So now, the result of that process, which I have engaged and I've been involved with, is that now I know what Leviticus is saying, isn't it? I know it. I can actually explain to people what the writer of Leviticus is saying. But I can also preach Jesus Christ and the plan of redemption from Leviticus. That is the process we have until now. Okay? That has to be concerned with exegesis. And that is a science. That is a science. Come behind me again, Titus, and go home. Good. That is a science. But we're saying to hermeneutics, there is two sides. There's science, but then there is also an art, isn't it? The science has to do with digging, has to do with getting out, processes, methods. So we talked about genres, we talked about figures of speech, isn't it? Methods. But there is an art now, an art of communication, an art of delivery. Well, I have all this information. I have understood the text. I know what it is saying. I can see Jesus in it. I can see the plan of redemption, or how my text relates to the plan of redemption. But remember, I'm a preacher. And I've got to communicate that which I know, that which I understand. I now have to pass on to other people, isn't it? And that becomes a different ballgame altogether. It becomes a different matter. That is the matter we call homiletics. Okay? Homiletics. But homiletics has got two sides to it. Two sides. And I hope you can write that down. There is two sides to homiletics. The one part you will deal with at this level, all right? The other part you will deal with in your diploma class. We have a class in the diploma called Rhetoric and the Art of Preaching or Pulpiteering, okay? So that we train you how to speak and how to convince people, how to package your points, how to convey them across, how to make sure people are actually listening to you, all right? That we do in that other course in the diploma. But then I'm saying then in terms of hermeneutics, or sacred hermeneutics as we call them, hermeneutica sacra, we have two branches there, or two aspects to it. The one is preparation of the sermon, all right? Preparation of the sermon. And then the other is the preaching of the sermon. These are two tasks within the homiletical spectrum, within the homiletical purview. You've got the one part has to do with preparation of the sermon. I am not in the eyes of the people. I'm still in my room. I'm in my office. I'm in my bedroom, wherever it is you prepare your message from. I have my books. I have everything. I have my points. I want to prepare what you call a preachable sermon, a preachable sermon. I have to have a draft, don't I? Sorry, thank you very much. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Thank you. This is homiletics, not hermeneutics. Thank you very much, brother. Okay then? So that's the first process then. It's process number one. And this process we deal with here at this level. Today, we're going to start dealing with this. How do you prepare your sermon? But this other part of hermeneutics, we're going to defer. We're going to postpone it to those of you who are going to come to the diploma. And we deal with the whole course unit on rhetoric, which is speaking. Rhetoric is speaking, all right? And the art of preaching or pulpiteering. So let us forget that for a moment, all right? because it is not for this level of your study. This is carried over to the diploma, but we are dealing with preparation of the sermon. Preparation of the sermon. Are we still together? Because I'm going to wrap that off. So I'm going to say here, sermon preparation. That's the heading I'm going to put here. How do you prepare your sermon? How do you prepare your sermon? How do you come up with something which you take with you to the stage to preach from? Now, remember, by this time, you already have material. That is what your exegesis gave you, all right? So, I suggest to you that as you do your exegesis, all right, take notes. Every small note. This is the first point. Okay? Take notes. As you study, take notes. As you study, take notes. For example, I may find myself in Ecclesiastes, say chapter 5. I may find myself there. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, I want to prepare a message on this text, all right? Ecclesiastes 5. So it says, guard your steps. Can you all go there, please? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 1. This is my text. This is from where I need to preach. So I'm going to prepare a message. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Let's take verse 1 and let's go to verse 7. Okay. So this is where our sermon will come from, all right? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 1 to verse 7. By the way, I didn't prepare for this, I've just put it out there, okay? So let's think through it together. And I want you to think through it with me. We don't have a lot of, the benefit of a lot of time to do this. So it says, guard your steps. Imagine yourself, you're going to preach on this. So you're reading now, you're studying, okay? So here we go. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools, who do not know that they do wrong. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth. So let your words be few. All right. A dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin, and do not protest to the temple messenger, my vow was a mistake. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy the work of your hands? Much dreaming and many words are meaningless. Therefore, fear God. Now, my exegesis, hoping I did it correctly, all right? I have done exegesis, and one of the things I understood about Ecclesiastes is that Solomon is talking about life under heaven, all right? And how meaningless everything is, not in heaven, but under heaven. In other words, everything we see passes away. It cannot fulfill that eternal. This is the general context of the book of Ecclesiastes. He wants to show us that everything in life, in the end, it passes. It is not eternal. I'm thinking now, isn't it? So, I have jotted that down. Life is temporal. I am taking notes. I've seen that. Okay. But in chapter 5, the man deals particularly with what we might call the fear of God, which is what he wants people to actually understand. That is the way he will end the whole book. Then I saw that everything under the sun was useless, and this one thing I saw, that the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. That's the way he ends the book. So the whole subject has to do with the fear of God. But how does he deal with this? He deals with it in the context of the house of God. Maybe in terms of public worship. All right? Maybe in terms of personal vows. These are many thoughts I'm finding from the book. Can you see it? And the thought that comes to me, I write it down. Are we together? Because this that you're writing down are thoughts which you get from where? From the text. They are the raw material of your sermon. So you are gathering raw material for your sermon. Alright? Then I find that when he talks about these things, he talks about hastiness. Can I say hastiness? In making promises. People who are quick to make promises which they don't think through. Isn't it? There's that there. You see it in verse 2. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God, he says. And then he speaks of the sovereignty or the mightiness of God. God is in heaven and you're on earth. So God is great. God is to be feared. I find that thought in the text. For God is in heaven and you're on earth. That means he is greater and you're smaller. So then verse 4, when you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it. Well, he's speaking about faithfulness. I hear faithfulness there. I hear faithfulness. Well, when I say something, it needs to be something which I can fulfill. I get that from the text. You see, every thought that I find, I'm putting it down. I'm now collecting many thoughts. These are the raw material for my sermon. So the first step in sermon preparation is when you're doing your exegesis, when you are studying, write down the notes. That rough piece of paper is filled up, put it aside. Write another one until your thoughts are finished. And there's nothing more you can think about the text. But I think there's still more that I can think about the text. He has no pleasure in fools. Alright, fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth, and he says now, the guarding of the mouth. And I'll find that somewhere else in the Bible speaks about the mouth, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially that small thing in the mouth called what?
Tongue.
The tongue. And so these are thoughts, and by the way, when I thought of that, which book was that which I talked about?
Proverbs 18:21.
Oh, that's life and death are in the power of your tongue. Okay, you can put that there. You can say Proverbs 18:21. But also in the New Testament?
Yes.
James, that's right. Now, do you see I'm having thoughts? This thought came to me, but I remember somewhere else in the Bible where it talks about the mouth. And I already put those texts because I will need to use them. I'm gathering raw material. Alright? So every thought that comes to me, I write it down. If a text comes in line with that thought, I put it next to that. These are my raw material. So you go on and verse 6. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin. Of course, that's the one you're talking about. And do not protest the temple messenger. My vow was a mistake. Well, do not tell the messenger of the temple, I made a mistake in this vow. In other words, sin once it's been committed, you can't take it back, isn't it? No return in sin. That's another thought I'm having in my head. Once I've done it, it's done. It's done. The damage is done. It's a thought in my head. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy the work of your hands? So there is consequences, isn't it? Aren't there? Yeah, that's right. For sin. Therefore, did you see the word therefore there? Did you see the word therefore? At the end, in verse 7? Did you see the word therefore? When the word therefore is used now, listen, we are doing word study. And we are looking at the sentence. And we're looking at what words have been used, isn't it? When somebody says therefore, what are they doing? What does that mean to you? He's concluding. This is why I have been saying what I've been saying. Brother, sister, coffee is bad for your health. Well, no, this is coffee actually. Okay, so I'm just giving an example. Coffee is bad for your health. And smoking is not good for your health. Therefore, I want you to live a healthy life. Therefore means I'm concluding, I'm giving you the reason why I have said the things I've said. Isn't the conclusion therefore the big idea? Isn't it the big idea? Now, the second step of sermon preparation, write this down, it is to identify the big idea. Identify the big. What is the big message? So you have taken notes, but in terms of your exegesis, you identified the big idea. I don't even know why I deleted those because I still want to come back to them, but anyway, here we are. So that was one. Collect your notes. 2. Identify the main or big idea. The big idea here, obviously, is what? According to our study, what's the big idea here? To fear God, that's right. So how do you identify the big idea? How do you identify the big idea? Of course, number one, we have seen already, it is the conclusion, all right? In this case, it is the conclusion, therefore, fear God, isn't it? But in the case of that parable in Luke chapter 18, verse 1, and Jesus gave this parable to the intent that men ought always to pray and not cease. Well, the purpose is declared, proclaimed, given before the story is told. So you're being told why the story is being told. So sometimes it's not the conclusion, it is the stated purpose. This is how you identify the big idea. In our text in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, it is the conclusion that gives us the big idea. Therefore, all right? But in Luke chapter 18, it was the very beginning when the writer is telling us why he's saying the story. So we can identify the big idea right there. But there's a third thing you need to look for when you're trying to identify the big idea in a passage. Look out for that repeated word or repeated phrase or repeated thought. Look out for that repeated word, repeated phrase, or repeated thought. Let me just say repeated thought. Or I could say word, I could also say phrase. Now please look then at our text, and that is in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Why do people guard their steps? Because they are Why do I do that? Because I am? Come on, I am? Okay, I'm walking in a field. Let me make it simple for you. I'm walking in a field where I know there are thorns. Alright? So I'm doing that. Guarding my step. Right? Why am I guarding my step? I'm afraid. Fear causes me to do that. So you can see the thought of fear in verse 1. Can you not see it? Alright. Do not be quick with your mouth, verse 2. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. Why am I careful not to utter anything before God? God is in heaven and I am on. What is guiding me here? Fear. I fear God. God is able to throw me in eternal fire. I'm afraid. Therefore, I'm not going to talk anyhow. Why is it that when you are in your own house, you can say anything? Can you say anything when you're in State House, Nairobi? No. Because you are afraid. That thought is repeated. You see it in every line. You can identify the big idea by what is repeated. It could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be a thought, an idea, a feeling. Keep going. When you make a vow before God, do not delay to fulfill it. Why? He has no pleasure. When somebody has no pleasure, do we fear him or do we not fear him? We fear him. The thought of fear here is very big. Okay. And then he says, verse 6, do not let your mouth lead you into sin. Then in verse 7 he says, therefore, fear God. So you also see that the thought is repeated time and again, but the very conclusion gives us the main idea. So you can arrive at the main idea by its conclusion, the stated purpose, or repeated thought, word, or phrase. You can then say, this is the big idea. Are we there? Yes. We are trying to come up with a sermon, a preachable sermon. We've collected many points. We don't even know which one is the first and which one is the last, isn't it? We don't know, actually. We've just collected every thought that was true, we wrote down. What we saw in the text, we wrote down. Then we said, but what's the big idea here? Isn't it? And then we've identified the big. Now watch. Third, ask yourself, how does the big idea relate to the collected points? Remember, the first was to collect our notes. So we have points there. We've written them down. Then our next task was to say, what is the big idea here? What is the writer trying to communicate at the end of the day? He's trying to get us to fear God. All right. But he has said so many things in the process of trying to make us to fear. So you're asking, how does the big idea relate with the points? How does the big idea relate to the points? How does that? The other way to ask this question would be to say, how does he use the points to develop the big idea? That's the other way of asking this same question. How is he using these small points to develop the big idea? Rita? Say that again? I've obscured you. Sorry. Thank you very much. So how is he using the points to develop the big idea? Now, what's my big idea in this lecture? To get you to know how to prepare someone. That's my big idea as a lecturer in this class now. But remember, I'm using so many other words, so many other points, but my one objective is to help you to be able. So everything I'm saying is related to helping you be able to prepare someone, right? Everything I'm saying. So we are saying if the writer has a big idea, then everything else he's saying helps that big idea. The question we're asking is, how does those things help that big idea? And in my case, I might say, for example, that he uses the house of God and the sacrifice as an example. When I come to the house of God to offer sacrifice, my carefulness should display the fear of God. That's one. And that's the point I preach on. How do we offer sacrifice before God? Do we offer them like fools? How do we sing? By the way, that was the subject we're dealing with in Kisumu, if you remember. Worship. How then do we come to worship? Do we bring anything? Cain and Abel, they brought sacrifice. How did they do that? Leviticus chapter 10 verse 1. Those boys offered strange fire. How did they do that? Did God accept it? So these are all illustrations that come to mind. But he also talks in verse 2 about the mouth and how it can lead us not to fear God. So let us be in control. So I say, okay, fine. The conduct in the house of God, point number 1. The conduct of my mouth, how I use my mouth. It's very important, the fear of God. So that's point number 2. Do you see, I'm already getting the points. Just, again, I'm thinking, I didn't prepare this at all. At all. I just opened like this, like that. But I want to think with you so you can see how we think. All right. But then, he then speaks about the gravity of sin, that you cannot take back what you've done. That should make you be careful. If I know if I do this, I can't repair it. If I do this, I can't take it back. Then I'm more careful, isn't it? So that is brought as a third point. A fourth point might be punishment, isn't it? Which we've sort of gleaned. So there I've gleaned 4 points out of this. This is how the writer is developing the big idea of fearing God conduct in the house of God, conduct with respect to our mouths, you know, the irrevocableness of our deeds, and then, lastly, punishment that is due to our deeds. Now, those are all points which are from the text. I'm being faithful to the text. The text is giving me thoughts, and these are the thoughts that I will give people. So that it is true, I'm not preaching my mind, I'm preaching the word of. So you ask yourself, how does the big idea relate to the other points? Or put it differently, how does the use of the points, how does he use the points to develop the big idea? Now listen carefully. In terms of preparing a sermon, here is the fourth thing you're going to think about. Think about your title or your heading. All right? Think about the title or your heading. Think about that. Now, this is a very important thing. Very, very, very important. I hate myself. I really do. I hate a message which is headless. It's like a headless chicken. Have you seen a headless chicken running around? It's a horrible thing to see. If you could see it. That's like a message without a heading, a title. You've got to think about your title, your heading. What am I going to call my message? What are people going to go home saying? He spoke to us about this thing. This is what he was saying. I want us to spend some time there, right? So if you have your pen and paper, book, be ready, because I want to develop that thought just a little more. It's so important. And I make that argument in my book. So you're thinking about your heading, which is point number 4 then. There's a number of things I want to say with regard to dealing with a heading or a title or a theme that you've chosen. Remember, we are not wise men who are trying to impress people with our cleverness. All right? We are those that want to bring the message of the Bible. So I say to you that the very first thing you must make sure is that your heading comes from the text. It comes from the text. It is controlled by the text. It is generated from the text. All right, are we together? So it must come from the text. You can't go to an encyclopedia or go to Wikipedia and then try to see what are the most beautiful sermon titles there are. And then you pick one and then you plaster it. And then you are talking about the fear of God, for example, in chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes, and you begin to say, the tremendous doctrine of election. it's not, yeah, thank you, it's out. It's not related to the text, is it? So you must say, my theme, my title, my heading must come from the text or must be related to the text. This is important. Second thing we have to say concerning a heading is that the title you choose, the heading you choose, must be a summary of the message of the text. The heading you choose, the title you choose, must be a summary of the passage or the text from which you want to preach. It must be. It must be. In other words, when somebody hears your title, it must say as much as possible about your whole message. It must give an indication which direction you're going. So headings really are a summary, isn't it? So in fact, let's put that differently, okay? In point number 3, let's just put the same thing, but let's put it differently. Your heading must capture the main idea. Your heading must capture the main idea. What's the main idea of Ecclesiastes chapter 5? Give it to me now. The fear of God. That could be my title. Dear brothers and sisters, I want to speak to you today on the subject, the fear of God. And our text is Ecclesiastes chapter 5 from verse 1 to verse 7. So that title, number 1, comes from the message, is related to the passage, because there is even that phrase at the end, therefore, fear God. But it is also a summary of the text. I mean, the whole text is driving us to the fear of God. But my dear friend, it is also a capturing of the big idea. If we were to go back to Luke chapter 18, verse 1 to verse 8, we would say something like, I want to preach to you, dear brothers, about the need to pray without ceasing. But that's it. That's the big idea in that text. That's the thing about that text. So your heading cannot be from the moon when your passage is on the earth. There must be a connectivity there. Now there's something else we're going to say about the heading. I said I'll spend some time with this now. There's something else we have to say about headings. Your heading, if possible, should be short and interesting. Your heading should be short and interesting. Now, you know that people don't remember very long sentences. People don't. Long sentences are easy to forget because they're long and boring. But there are short, interesting titles which you remember all of your life. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. We are looking at Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 to verse 7, okay? You know the story there? It's the story of the fall, isn't it? Eve has a conversation with Satan and she gets the family into trouble. That is the story. I want to preach from that story. And I have so many things to say about that story, exegetically, all right? But I have to choose a title for my message. Now I want to give you two titles, okay? Title number 1. Don't write this, you don't have to. The way Adam and Eve fell into Satan's temptation. Well, that's a very long sentence. How many words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, when you hear a heading like that, you can begin to sleep like this brother is just about to sleep. Okay? It's a very long, non-interesting heading. Well, the way Adam and Eve fell into Satan's temptation. Well, we know the story. We were taught at Sunday school. This story has been told us again. We know the story. Well, Billy, you don't feel you want to follow the story. It's very long. Not interesting. There's nothing there that arouses your curiosity. But I'm going to give you another heading. All right? So let's consider heading number 2. How about that? A deadly conversation. Now, the way I look at your faces, you're thinking, what are you saying? And that's what I want you to feel. You already begin to think, what? A deadly conversation? Come on. You don't even know who I'm going to talk about because I'm not even told you it's Genesis 3. So we're going to think, well, Pastor, keep speaking. I want to hear. There's a sense this one raises your curiosity. You want to hear more. This one tells you everything before he begins to speak. So you're thinking, okay, fine, we know it's Adam and Eve and they fell and matunda, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. But this one, you're thinking, I want to hear more. Now, what's the difference between this and that one?
Long and short.
Thank you. This is 9 words. This is only 3. And the other one is not even a word. It's whatever, it is a word. An article. Deadly conversation. And then I'm going to talk about the conversation between Eve and the snake and how she slowly came. So, from the beginning, I arrest your attention. Somebody said, and I'll tell you this, by the way, in your rhetoric class in the diploma, if you manage to come, preaching is lost in the first 5 minutes. You lose it there, or you nail it there. The first 5 minutes. If it doesn't work in that window, it will not work. You've wasted your time. If the first 5 minutes go and people don't feel they need to listen to, you will struggle. They will be holding their children, bebeleza watoto, looking at their watches all the time. You win or you lose the battle for preaching in the first 5 minutes. That's where you lose it or you win. And it begins with what? Subject, what title, what theme, what heading you choose for yourself. So make it short and interesting. Now, as a rule of thumb, we usually say a heading should not have words that go beyond 5. Well, you can, sometimes the experience, you can actually do that and still get the result, but normally it should be less than 5 words. We're just trying to get a message, a sermon. That's all we're trying to do. And we've collected our points, we've asked how they relate to the main idea, we've said, okay, what's our title here? Now I want to say 2 more things about the heading, and then I want to leave it and go to something else. Is that okay? 2 more things about the heading. Here it is. And this is in terms of the importance of a good heading. The importance of a good heading. 1, you can say the importance of a good heading. The importance of a good heading. 1, a good heading will galvanize the message. A good heading will galvanize the message. To galvanize is to put together, okay? To galvanize is to put together. So you could say put together. Or rather, hold together, not put together. Hold together. A good heading is the magnet which keeps everything attached and cohering. A good message, a good heading does that. It galvanizes the message. It makes the different parts hold together. Remember, a good heading comes from the text. It comes from the main idea, isn't it? And the smaller points only help the main. So once you have the main idea, the smaller points rise to the main idea. It galvanizes the message. It holds it together. Let me give an illustration, an example of what I'm saying to you. If I don't have a heading, and I'm going to make a comment or commentary on Ecclesiastes chapter 5, I can speak about steps, sacrifice, fools, dreams, heaven, earth, fools, mistakes, mount, and all those are big ideas. Heaven is a very big idea, isn't it? Yeah. Heaven is a very big idea. I mean, if I begin to talk about heaven now, we can spend 10 months together. Like I'll be spending 10 weeks talking about hell in this church. I can talk about heaven forever. Because my message is not galvanized by a heading, I can go everywhere. Isn't it? Everywhere. Oh, heaven. So we talk about heaven. But no, the main idea is not heaven. The main idea is the fear of God. But because I don't have a heading or a good heading, I find myself talking about. So say a good heading galvanizes the message. Number 2. In fact, I'll say 3 things, not 2. A good heading will guide and restrain the speaker. A good heading will guide and restrain the speaker. Dear friends, there is many times that we find ourselves going every different directions when we are preaching or teaching. Have you ever heard a preacher asking the people, where was I? Oh, where was I? It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. Because he began saying a story, that story got a life of its own, that story became so interesting, he kept going with that story so that he forgot what he was saying the story for in the first place. But when I have a heading, every point I am giving, I'm asking, how does it relate to that heading? How does it relate to that heading? How does it relate? So it guides me, you see? It restrains me, it keeps me in the straight and narrow. One of the most dangerous things for a preacher is when you tell a joke in church, or you tell a joke during a sermon, or you tell a story and people like that story. People appreciate that joke. You are tempted to stay longer with that joke. So you have 40 minutes to preach, 1 hour to preach, you spend 25 minutes pursuing a joke. What are you left with for preaching? 30 minutes. Have you been faithful? So a good heading, a good theme will guide you and restrain you. You are always, and that's why I struggle with those who preach in our church here. I say all the time, please keep reminding us what you're talking about. Keep reminding us. When I'm preaching on a matter, even when I come to the smaller points, when I make several comments, I come back to that main point and say, this is why we must. This is, I'm reminding, because I'm being guided. At the same time, I'm guiding people. So a good point guides you and restrains you. It keeps you in the straight and narrow. But number 3 then, a good heading will also guide your hearers. A good heading will also guide your hearers. Now, do you know the reason why you're following what I'm saying to you? Is because I'm talking about heading, title, or theme. That's my heading. Alright? And it guides everything I'm saying to you. Do you remember when I said this? I mentioned a good. When I said point number 2, I mentioned a good. When I said number 3, I mentioned a good. A good heading will galvanize the message. A good heading, I'm keeping back to that, will restrain the speaker. A good heading will also guide the hearers. So I'm doing what I'm telling you to do with your preaching. Now you are able to follow me because you know all these 3 things relate to what? That's how you're able to keep up with me. You're able to follow me. On the larger context, we are talking about sermon preparation, isn't it? But we're not topic about heading, and we're breaking it down even further. You're able to follow because I have headings. I didn't just begin to come and say, oh, look people, if you want to preach, make sure your message is galvanized. Make sure your message guides people. And you're thinking, how? But once I declared the heading is, A good heading is important. Why? It does these things. So now you are guided. You can follow me. We can actually have a conversation. When you leave here and somebody asks you, what did you learn today? And you will say, we learned about how to prepare a sermon. And we particularly dealt with the importance of a heading. You are following me because at every stage I introduced my lecture to you with a heading. And I hope a good heading. Please don't come to church and just open your Bible and begin to shout. Alright? I mean, you will say many, that is why people come and say, Alubiri Sana, but what did he say? I'm not Alubiri. He preached, but what did he say? Oh, he actually preached very much. We thank God for him. But what did he say? Because the hearers were not guided, you see. And that is bad preaching. That is very, very bad preaching. Not good preaching at all. So please do ensure that your heading is good because it does guide the people. The people stand guided. Now I want to tell you something number 4. I'll stop here. And this also now leads me to the next stage, which I will talk to you about when you come from the break. Do you know that sometimes, like our brother Titus came in late, did he? Yes. If he just looked at the notes of our dear sister at the back there, just look at the notes, maybe he could see a heading written in red. He somehow can get going with the class, even though he missed some part. All right? Is that true? And even as I talk, I keep mentioning what we're talking about. It's sermon preparation. Now we're dealing with a heading. Somebody who came in late is able to pick up with me, and though he missed some part, can flow with me. Now, people don't come to church, they don't come to meetings at the same time. Some people have bad discipline, some people have good discipline. Yet they all must be ministered to. A good heading will include everybody, the latecomers and the earlycomers. It helps them. What if you didn't have a heading? You are just shouting in the air. You know, somebody comes in the middle of the service, they can't follow. They just can't. But if someone had a structure, all right, then it is easy, not just for you as a speaker, not just for your hearers, but also for those who come in afterwards. Therefore, the next place, number 5 after the heading, all right, which I want us to think about when you come from the break, is the importance of a definite structure to a sermon. The importance of a definite structure to a sermon. A sermon must have a structure. This is where it begins. This is where it will go to. This is where it will conclude. But we'll talk about that after the break. Is that okay? Again, we're not talking about preaching. We are talking about gathering a sermon. I want to have a preach-able sermon. And those of you who bought that book by Stortolio, Preaching Pure and Simple, might find a lot of help in that particular regard. Take a break and then come back. We'll deal with the rest.